For those who are pretty familiar with the Beatles catalog, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that Help started out as a movie assignment, but it ended up catching John in a rare moment of accidental honesty.
I need somebody help, not just anybody.
The second Beatles film was originally announced under the awkward working title 8 Arms to Hold You, which would have been a nightmare to turn into a clean pop single. Once the film became Help, Lennon and Paul wrote the title song quickly, with Lennon later saying he didn't fully understand at the time how personal it was. Because on the surface, it sounded like another sharp and upbeat Beatles single, but underneath, it was John admitting that Beatlemania had become too big, too fast, and that he felt lost inside. The stranger thing about Help is that the lyric is almost too direct, but the record hides it in plain sight. Lennon was not writing a fictional character or a cute movie theme. He was writing about himself, looking back at a younger version of his life when things felt easier, before fame turned him into a public object. And years later, he connected the song to a period when he felt insecure, overweight, and emotionally adrift, even though he was standing near the top of the world's most famous band. And that contrast is what makes the song so sneaky. It moves like a bright pop rock single, but the words are basically a distress call. The Beatles recorded the song on April 3rd, 1965 in Studio 2 at EMI in Abbey Road, with George Martin producing and Norman Smith engineering. The session ran from 7 p.m. to 11:15 p.m., and they completed the song in a single evening. They recorded 12 takes, beginning with a rhythm track before adding in vocals, tambourine, and George Harrison's lead guitar part. And that famous descending guitar line was not nailed as part of the basic track, it was saved for overdubbing, which says a lot about how quickly the Beatles were moving from just a band in a room recording toward their more deliberate studio construction. But one of the best little recording details is that Lennon's acoustic guitar body can reportedly be heard in the stereo mix because he tapped out the beat as a guide for Harrison's overdubbed lead guitar figure. That's the kind of tiny studio accident that makes the record feel alive, even though it was being carefully assembled. There was also a separate film-related vocal session on May 24th, 1965 at CTS Studios because the movie needed its own audio work. So the version of the song that most people know as a record and the Help tied to the film are not quite the same simple one-and-done artifact.
Help! I need somebody help, not just anybody.
Released as the title song for both the film and the soundtrack, Help became another huge Beatles hit. It reached number 1 in both the UK and the US, but its real importance is not just the chart success. It's one of the first major Lennon songs where the mask slips off, and the clever Beatle, the funny Beatle, the untouchable pop star, suddenly asked for help in words plain enough that nobody needed a decoder ring. The catch is that almost nobody heard it that way in 1965 because the record was just too catchy, too fast, and too perfectly Beatles.